This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Recording has started. Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is the blue-eyed bomber from the Burger Pits.
Phil and Perich.
Okay, Philip, I gotta ask you a question here. Very important. Is it Perich or Perich?
Perich.
Okay, because you know Lucas is Perich. I think
This is Luca Perich, and you're listening to the Kids and Lunatics podcast.
Okay, that time it had the TH in it. I don't know. Man, my ears are going. I'm old, Philip. I don't know what I hear anymore. I don't know what I see anymore. I'm caught falling between universes constantly. I don't know what's real anymore. I feel like Batman. But speaking of not knowing what's going on, let's talk about M.O.D.O.K, our new... one of the last of the Marvel TV shows over on Hulu. God bless you, little logos.
Yeah, tell me about this. How many episodes did they drop?
Apparently they dropped them all. They're all there.
Okay.
I got through 3. And then I was like, I was going to say, okay, cause I thought, first I thought it was just 3, because like one of my Marvel boards said, okay, here's the spoiler thread for 1 through 3. And then I'm like, okay, now 4 started. Like, wait, is 4 available? Yeah, it looks like they're all there. So you can watch the whole series if you want to binge them. They're good. I mean, here's what I'll say about M.O.D.O.K. I like it. It's a lot of fun. It is, I don't know if there is enough to grab onto with it. I will say this, they do give a little post at the end in the credits saying, hey, make sure you read M.O.D.O.K Head Games, which is also written by Patton Oswalt. And it makes me like, well, wait. I read M.O.D.O.K Head Games, which has this entire family subplot as a subroutine within M.O.D.O.K's head, and super adaptoids feature prominently in that, and we do have a super adaptoid in this. I don't know if this is going to be a WandaVision, it was the super adaptoid all along kind of story, or if those are two completely different things, and you can't take from one to put into the other. But as it exists as a standalone series, I mean, I can see this being as interesting as the Venture Brothers. I mean, so here's the thing about M.O.D.O.K. He is, by his nature, a ridiculous character. He looks ridiculous. He was always going to be a little ridiculous. But how deadly he is depends on the writer. Because they can write him super deadly. They can write him with no human emotion and just murdering for murder's sake. And this one holds into itself a lot of very humanistic vibes, much like what M.O.D.O.K sought in the Head Games arc. And there is a little exchange in episode 3 about the idea of having a theoretical family. This is something that M.O.D.O.K says to one of his henchmen who gets his arm shot off in the first episode. And I imagine, but he is likewise a guy who gets every horrifying thing happen to him, but also somehow survives. So it makes for an interesting aspect that changes the story. So just that is like that little nugget that you latch onto, that you wonder what it's about. But beyond that, there's not much to give you. Although we do have also, spoilers, a time-traveling younger M.O.D.O.K out to kill M.O.D.O.K. So we'll see where that goes. But the Super Adaptoid character is a lot of fun, especially how everyone treats him as a toaster, which opens up this very interesting dichotomy for those who want to dig super deep into WandaVision and M.O.D.O.K. And if we want to go into that idea of the idea of creating a sitcom world out of trauma, and M.O.D.O.K, if we've read head games, we know has endured a lot of trauma. It creates this interesting story that you could write in retrospect. And that's the thing. It's like one of these things where it's like, it's sort of this idea that I think you get a lot in comics, which is that one writer writes this, and then another writer writes that. And then years later, another writer says, oh, but you see how these two fit together? Mm-hmm. So now maybe that's the story. We turn the pieces this way, and now we have another story. So I'm not convinced that everything is what it seems, but I'm also under no illusions that everything is not exactly as it seems. Although I will say this, Patton Oswalt, again, would make a great Doctor Doom, I will have to say, because he has that same petty weakness to his characters. He exemplifies that guy who wants to be the smartest man in the room, but always is not. There's a nice bit in here with Tony Stark showing up, who I'm guessing everyone knows is Iron Man in this universe.
I think most universes anymore, people usually know he's Iron Man.
Yeah, and so there's the evil corporation, and that is the big reveal at the end of episode 3. I won't spoil that, but yeah, there is a reveal about that. Though it's not quite clear what that reveal really is. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy M.O.D.O.K. I would recommend it to people that, here I'll say, if you like Venture Brothers, you'll like M.O.D.O.K. If you like Robot Chicken, you'll definitely like M.O.D.O.K. It's the same animation studio. It's not as gaggy as Robot Chicken. It's not like it's Robot Chicken by way of Patton Oswalt, not by way of Seth MacFarlane. So that's a good thing in my mind, anyway.
And you said there was some kind of message at the beginning. Go pick up Patton Oswalt's M.O.D.O.K head games.
Well, at the very end, that is there.
Oh, okay.
So at the end, it's going to say pick that up. It was sort of like it tags it at the end.
I mean, I don't know why they didn't just do that with every Marvel, movie and TV show at the beginning of the end, just like a quick 30-second, hey, you like this, go to the comic shop.
Well, because this was written by the same people.
Yeah, but still, it's like, yeah, hey, you like, you're watching an Iron Man movie. Hey, you
like
Iron Man.
I think they know that, quite frankly, just because you liked Civil War the movie doesn't mean you're going to like Civil War the comic.
Yeah.
They're two very different storylines. And it's like, here's the thing. If you like the movie, there's no guarantee you'll like the book.
No.
If you like the book, there's no guarantee you'll like the movie. But I think that it's easier to like the book and then like the movie than like the movie and then like the book. Because I think doing the reverse engineering back to the book is usually a lot more layered and a lot more contextual. That you're just going to feel like all of this stuff that's happening right now is way less interesting than what the actual story is.
I mean, I'm not saying you're going to get a tidal wave of sales, but I think you could get a few people and more people into the shops, or even if they just
that's what they have YouTube for.
Yeah, or if they drop into like a Barnes and Noble or something, and for a graphic novel or something.
Funny you should mention Barnes & Noble, because there's a line in there about, I have a signing at a Barnes & Noble. I want to get there before they close forever. Because print is dead. As J. Jonah Jameson once said. Oh, God. You want to just get to the comic books, though? I mean, there's lots of stuff we could talk about. Bad Batch, yada, yada, yada. That whole thing about Rangers of the Frontier in Star Wars that isn't happening because that lady said stupid things, and now no one wants to watch her in movies anymore.
I mean, we got plenty of comics we can talk, so yeah, that's fine.
Got lots of comics. Hey, here's one from a couple weeks ago, Vampire the Masquerade. Forgot what vampire book I read. She said American Vampire, which I can never get behind because I actually wrote a book called American Vampire that never got published. And so I was very sad when someone didn't steal my idea, and it's just vampires in America. It's like, well, that's silly. I mean, obviously there are vampires in America. There's all sorts of things about vampires in America. Why are you making a book called American Vampire if it's about just random vampires? But anyway, there's this whole thing. There's a whole thing. It all deals with the Silver Mortician's Hammer, which I think is a thing. I have no idea. A comic book told me, so I'm going to assume it's real. Probably it's not, but it looks cool, and that's a thing. And yeah, so for those who are reading it who like vampires and Vampire the Masquerade, it's really cool. There's so much lore to deconstruct in all of this. It's a little hard to sort of give you a Cliff Notes version, but I really like it. And it's 2 weeks old, so I would highly recommend, if you're a fan of Vampire the Masquerade, picking up the Vampire the Masquerade comic book by our good folks at the Vault Comics. It really deals with them well. It's set in Minnesota and the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. One thing I want to say, which is weird about it, is there are in this episode it makes this point, but there are 200 vampires in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Now, when I played vampires, the rule was 100,000 people for one vampire in a city. Obviously, they soon realized they couldn't do that mathematically. So now I'm guessing it's closer to 1,000 or 10,000 people in the city for each vampire. So that if you have 200 vampires, you would need to have at least 2 million or 20 million people in a city area. So that is interesting. Next story I want to talk about. I'm going to go through my indie books real quick.
Before you move on, that Vampire the Masquerade, what issue number was that?
Oh, I dropped it on the floor already.
That's okay. That's fine. I'll find it.
I think it was 5 or 4 or 6.
Okay, I'll find it. Yeah, maybe
8. I'll find it for you in a minute. This is interesting. This is Orville, Digression, Part 1 of 2. So, if you're an Orville fan like I am, this is the tale of the universe in which Mockingbird went back in time and remembered the future and didn't date the captain. And it's really interesting because it is literally this idea of this woman who remembers the future, how everyone's lives unfolded. It's like, if you are the uber nerd that I am and you are just dying for them to sign the paperwork on the Orville, this is a great filler for you. This is from Dark Horse Comics. And, oh my gosh, it is so interesting. It's like going to that Mirror Mirror universe. and it is enjoyable. So, very much highly recommending the Orville if you are an Orville fan.
Is that the thing that there's still discussions before, the Orville's not on right now because what is it isn't Seth MacFarlane, he doesn't want to come back and they don't want to do it without him?
Seth MacFarlane has enough money, he doesn't want to work anymore. Or he only wants to work, as like a writer, he wants to basically pitch stuff and then have other people do it, because he has many millions of dollars now, and he's really just trying to get out of his contractual obligations. And he says, hey, I will run the show, let Mockingbird run it, and let other people write it, and I'll just look at every episode and I'll say, yeah, that's good, or I'll send it back. I'll come down to the set every once in a while, but I don't want to be on the show anymore. He is tired of working.
I wonder if that was the whole thing from day one, is he wanted to get this on the air and they were like, yeah, no, they weren't going to do it unless he was actually in it or something, and he was like, okay, yeah.
Well, for whatever way they did it, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. My last indie book, Phil. Again, friend of the show. We only find them when they're dead. Number 6. I was not expecting a 6th issue. After the last issue, where Malik goes out and faces the god, and then they accidentally kill a god, which is one of those moments where it's like, whoa, you accidentally killed a god? And essentially what we have now is this entire far outer colony that exists in this universe that is, as it turns out, completely built around the corpse of the last god. The god they met who was alive, who died. And Malik came back, and I don't know, man. It's a beautiful story. I was not expecting it to continue after the last issue that it did. Has me incredibly excited. We only find them when they're dead. This is by our good friend Al Ewing. Al Ewing, what does he write? He writes something that we like.
Immortal Hulk.
Immortal Hulk, yeah. It's weird, because I like this way better than Immortal Hulk, because Immortal Hulk has been... It's on its downturn again. But this I like.
Well, again, I think most people do better on the stuff they create, from scratch instead of, the pre-created characters,
Yeah, trying to work within someone else's universe is never easy. Okay, that's my indie books, Phil. Do you have anything you want to talk about before we get to our big stack of Marvels this week?
No, that's fine. No.
Okay, Philip. My Athema, Phil.
Oh, Fantastic Four Life Story number 1.
Did they do this with Spider-Man where they just decided, nothing that we ever said before about these characters matters anymore, and we're just going to toss it all out like it didn't ever happened?
Yeah, I was thinking about this too. If it goes like Spider-Man did, issue 1 I think is usually the weakest, just because it's like, okay, this is the decade they actually got their powers, so this is probably like the weirdest one. Because, once we get to the next issue, it'll be the 70s, and they've already had their powers like 10 years or more. And I think what they do, since they're doing a Lifetime in a miniseries, they try to be like, okay, maybe the people are kind of petty or they're kind of weird in the beginning, but then they come together and they grow together by the end.
Yeah. And I get what you're saying, but here's the problem. Let me count the pages. 1, 2, 3, 4. Page 4 of story. Panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Reed Richards is clearly on the phone with someone who he tells, hey, yeah, you know the Rocket better than anyone. I wish you could be on the flight team. Cool. I assume he's talking to Ben Grimm. Then, yada, 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 Ricardo's mad at him, yada, yada, yada. They say, hey, do you know a pilot we could get? Fudging Johnny Storm says, I know a pilot? And then we get to Ben Grimm?
Yeah, that's weird. It's like...
It makes literally no sense!
Why do we erase the Reed and Ben friendship? And if anybody... I mean, okay, if you want to erase that, okay, but it's like, how does 16-year-old Johnny Storm know Ben Grimm?
There is literally no reason.
They don't even give you... Yeah, I mean, if they had given us...
It is like... Yeah, it is just so nonsensical. And then they essentially write out Ben the rest of the story, which is... You know, it basically stabs the entire concept of the Fantastic Four in the heart. I mean, obviously I'll read episode 2, but it's really disappointing. When you cut into the actual fabric of the story and say, no, we're just going to trank it. We'll trank it. We'll just say, maybe that guy knew him. I don't know. That makes sense for me. It's disrespecting the story. It's disrespecting what came before. And it's hurtful to me as a fan of these characters.
And I mean, you kind of saw it coming. It's like, okay, so Reed has to keep poking, and that's what draws Galactus to Earth, or is going to draw Galactus to Earth.
Which doesn't even make sense. Honestly, nothing about that makes sense. I mean, the idea that, cosmic rays made me see Galactus, and now I'm going to try and see what that was. And I mean, it's kind of cool that we get Ricardo Jones as a character. Mm-hmm. Now I'm wondering if his son wound up in an orphanage at some point and eventually ran out onto a atomic testing range. But
well, Ricardo Jones, we could get his brother, because his brother does show up in the 90s in Spider-Man. That's how we get Spider-Hulk. Ricardo Jones's brother tries to rebuild the device, steal gamma energy from the Hulk, and he accidentally infects Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll go along with it.
So I'm saying there's a brother in continuity, so yeah, they could bring his brother into it.
There's so much continuity out there. That was the thing. I'm reading this thing, wait, did we already establish that guy was Ricardo Jones in This Man, This Monster? And again, annoyingly completely undercuts This Man, This Monster. One of the most classic early Fantastic Four. One of the earliest Stan Jack stories.
Yeah, like takes the heart out of it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it just really feels like it eviscerates the heart out of every character. It's like the Trank version. It's the Trank version of the Fantastic Four.
They should have had Ricardo Jones do this to Ben against his will, and then they should have had Ben, normal human Ben Grimm, run in to try to save Reed, because Ricardo Jones, did this. And
I liked it better when just he did it against his will, and he's passed out in an alley. That he's human, but he's passed out in an alley for a few hours until Ricardo dies. And then this being what brings Galactus, it's like you don't need to write that far in the future. I mean, not for nothing, on this series, you've got the most time of any series.
Oh, yeah, you got decades.
I mean, heck, I was hoping in this, there's going to be a whole scene with Mr. Miracle, which is, he shows up in issue 3.
I know, we literally had, if we started in 1961, they went to 69, we had at least, 9 years. It's like, yeah. We got a brief glimpse of the Mole Man, and then we, skip right to Ricardo Jones.
I'm just going to say this, when we get to this final scene at the end with Franklin...
Yeah.
And by the implication of it, that doesn't happen until 1973, because I know me and Franklin, we're about the same age. So it was a real disappointment. As a story, it's a good story. I'm not going to say it's not a good story.
But I'm
going to say, it's like, if you're a Fantastic Four fan, this is a better written Josh Trank's Fantastic Four. Is what it is.
That's what I was going to say. It's a good story if it wasn't a Fantastic Four story. If this was like four strangers we had never met before.
Yeah. And like I said, the whole Johnny knowing Ben thing is weird.
Yeah, they just seem like they're right, and then they're writing Johnny as he's this. And
And who is Reed
Ne'er-do-well.
talking to in the previous scene?
Is that going to be Doom?
I hope to heck it's not. Honestly, if that's Doom he's talking to, it's just stupid. It is just it's trying to force Doom into the Fantastic Four story, which is the mistake that Josh Trank did.
And again, we went the first decade with no Doom, no Namor.
It's ridiculous. Honestly, I hope episode 2 is better. But this may be a Fantastic Four book that I decide, you know what, it's not. I would rather read Unstable Molecules. I would rather read the unpublished episodes of Unstable Molecules than this.
I was gonna say I had kind of the same thoughts on this, but I was like, okay, I like Spider-Man life story better. I just didn't know if because I'm such a big Spider-Man fan. But yeah, I mean, again, give it time because I said.
But did they make Uncle Ben just a jerk he never met? I mean, that was the thing. That's the thing about it. Yeah. It's like, did they suddenly establish that J. Jonah Jameson was actually a very cool guy and, you know, not an abrasive jerk, and J. Robertson was the jerk the whole time.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as it wasn't. They didn't have the problems this did, but I think I'm trying to remember. I think that one was okay, but once they got past it, you know, then they had like room to like really open up because it's like, you know, he's older, you know, he can really.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling
again. I don't know if they don't want to do it like it since they're doing like basically a whole life story. It's just like we want to show how these characters grow or whatever. But yeah, they kind of took some of the heart out of it. Yeah.
Okay, Phil, I can't pick. You pick the next book.
Oh my! Show me on the doll where Fantastic Four life story touched you.
Didn't touch me, it hurt me.
Well,
right here in the heart.
How about by a book by a good writer, Captain America 29 by Ta-Nehisi Coates?
Oh, well, this was a good book. Tristan was very upset because we had the variant cover with the Venom skull. And he's not in this book.
Yeah, they're just doing Heroes Reborn variants. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
So I guess in the end though, it's saying, was this Ta-Nehisi Coates' penultimate issue? Is the next one his last one?
I think so.
Oh yeah, because it says Ta-Nehisi and Leonard Kirk conclude their run on Captain America.
Yeah, well that's fine. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, I enjoy the book. I mean, there's nothing in this book I dislike. You know, we have Sin now gaining weird magical powers from evil.
Was that the Lucans?
Well, I mean, the implication is that when she was Mother Superior, she always had the powers. That's the thing. It's like it's implied that maybe the Red Skull gave her these mystical powers, but that in her regression and that basically there was a lot of power as yet unlocked from her, and that with Lucan sacrificing herself, which I assume is going to eventually remove Peggy Carter from that story. It's to get Sin to her perspective as Mother Superior. Mm-hmm. So she gets to be Mother Superior and gets to step outside of where she has been as a character. So, I mean, I like it. I like where it's going. I like Cap having to essentially rationalize, is this personal? And it's like, you know what? I get what you're saying. It is personal, but it was actually personal long before this.
Yeah.
You know, I know it looks like I'm just mad about what I've done or what I just endured, but actually I'm mad about people exploiting the nature of the American system to turn it against itself.
Oh, yeah. See, that's what you say. Yeah, it's like it's personal, but yeah, it's personal for all of us.
Exactly. And that's really impressive.
And towards the end here, are we using this? Are we pushing Sharon Carter more towards her Falcon and Winter Soldier version, with her giving that info to the Kingpin and be like, because Steve won't kill the Lucans, but, Sharon's like, well, hey, Wilson, they humiliated you, didn't they?
Yeah, well,
here's her itinerary.
And to be fair, that was always Sharon.
Yeah, but I really think it seems like they're pushing it they're pushing her a little more.
But, and I get what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that, yeah, exactly.
It was more subtle before. Now it's not so subtle.
Well, no, I think before this, it has always been that Steve doesn't want to know.
Yeah.
And that is essentially the way people treat Steve. It's like, you know what, Steve? You are useful to everyone because we all respect you. But at the same time, there's so much going on that you don't even understand and that you don't know. And so we really have to push back on this sometimes.
Well, this is what I was trying to tell you a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I think that's Steve Rogers. He sees everything in black and white, and not everything is black and white. So, call it old-fashioned or whatever, but yeah, he's...
Yeah, I mean, Captain America, it's a good book. Ta-Nehisi's doing a great job on it. No, right there on the floor. Yes. Yeah, hand that to me. Yes, Vampire the Masquerade. Sorry. Just wanted to get that for you. It was episode 8. Issue 8.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, I had to get my remote to do the work for me. I can't move from this position. Anyway, let's go on to Shang-Chi, number 1. Speaking of heroes in villainous clothes.
Yes, I did not read that yet. Is that good?
It actually is. And here's the thing. It's called... I got a little weirded out because it was Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe. But that's kind of what it is.
Oh, really?
Really, except it's not an out-of-continuity thing. It's that Shang-Chi, because this takes up shortly after the end of the last round, and he is taking over the 5-Weapons Society as Brother Hand, and his little sister, Brother Esme from the Deadly Daggers, is like, I'm doing what you told me to. Can I kill this guy now? She's basically being his Damian Wayne. And he is, meanwhile, on a date with his superhero law lawyer girlfriend. What's her name? I'm missing her name all of a sudden. But anyway. Well, we get to this. So he winds up meeting up with Spider-Man. Because we get this little teaser at the beginning where it's like, we don't want to kill you, Spider-Man, but we will do what we need to do. And his little sister says, speak for yourself. Speak for yourself in your typical Moxie Street Urchin way. And then when Spider-Man... And this is a nice dichotomy compared to the Spider-Man books we'll talk in a minute. Because in this, Shang-Chi is like, hey, I don't want to tell Spider-Man about how I'm actually the head of a secret criminal organization called the 5-Weapons Society, yada, yada, yada. And it's interesting in comparison to what we see in Giant-Size Spider-Man and Spider-Man this week, because it is sort of, in this we see Spider-Man get infected by some Yeti root and then get cured from it by them taking the Yeti root off of him. And he's like, so, are you a hero? Are you still one of us? And it's kind of lousy of Spider-Man to say that, although it's not without its precedent, because it is this idea that, Shang-Chi, he's a mystical Asian type, I don't know, but, yeah. Then we see King Wildman, who has the Yeti root, be recruited by someone. We don't see who. Is it the sister who Shang-Chi got mad at? We don't know yet. Maybe it is his father's ghost. But next week, he's going to fight Captain America. Or next month, he's going to fight Captain America. So we'll have to see what happens. That's when there's a Cosmic Cube available. Because Shang-Chi, for those who don't know, is trying to undo all the evil of his father's organization. And we always know that works out just as you intend. Okay, hey, fella, only got 2 books left.
Oh.
Not counting the Spider-Man books.
Okay.
Do you want to talk the Spider-Man books, or do you want to talk my 2 books first?
I mean, we can talk your 2 books first. I think I know what they are.
Okay, that would be Heroes Reborn Blur.
Yep.
I love this book. This was such a great book, especially in the sense that the Blur sees the cracks too.
Yes.
That because of how the Blur had to be to make this universe happen, he is its own undoing. He is literally the Flashpoint. And I love that.
Oh, yeah, there's so many Flash call-outs in this issue, yeah.
Well, what's interesting about it is this fact that this universe was rewritten to be a kind of Silver Age DC book. Mm-hmm. We'll see how it's still the commies, which is why it's clearly Hyperion is the one rewriting this universe, unless it is the Coulson Silver Age fantasies of the books that he grew up reading. You know, who is the person who sold their soul? That's the question. Yeah. And can a android have a soul? Which they can, as we know, because the original Human Torch has a soul. That's a whole other bag of hammers, but it is canonical because he dreams. That essentially the hardest thing it is for the Blur to do is to sit and look at a flower. And this blows my mind because it's a scene I wrote years ago that obviously other people had the same inspirations I have, that sitting and contemplating a flower and its existence is the crux of humanity and life and existence. There is this idea that I had mythologized in my mind years ago, and probably it's based on something older, probably some old Buddhist thing, about, you know, how you can look at a flower and you can watch it grow, and it is so easy to crush and destroy, but there is no power in destroying it, because anything can destroy a flower. But a flower in its growth is its own beauty and perfection. And I love that. That he goes into the race against eternity at the end is very interesting. Although, again, that it's not so much eternity as maybe 1940s Vision. The powers of eternity. It's very interesting the way they draw that last scene.
I mean, I wonder too, is that just like a metaphor? It's like, yeah, eternity's trying to catch him.
Well, possibly. You know, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, part of me was waiting for that to be like Hyperion, and they were going to do the, oh, wow, that's interesting, that ad for Spider-Man. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But then we get this thing. So at Ravencroft Institute, where they just dropped off the Scarlet Witch, where a lady in another cell seems very intrigued. And then we get this, and you're reading this, part of you is thinking that it's Bullseye talking, but it's not. It's her old pal Echo. She eventually sends a rat to bite Bullseye with the Phoenix Force. But
isn't that interesting? She still has the Phoenix Force.
Yeah, well, you know what? Whatever did this, it can only restructure, it can't destroy. Mm-hmm. It's the conservation of mass law. that everything, it either must exist as matter or energy. It can't simply not exist. And then we get, of course, Blade and Cap busting Echo out, and Cap's like, I don't know, but you know what, I get the feeling you're important. And that we already have Cap as a Nexus being in this universal story is so exciting for me. That he's the one that can make Hyperion feel weak. That's cool. Oh, wow. Okay. So let's talk Spider-Man real quick.
All right.
So I did read Giant Size, and I did read this week's issue of Spider-Man. And I do feel they both tie together. And I do have to say that ad at the end of Giant Size Spider-Man, or that ad at the end of this week's Spider-Man, what we get at the end of this week's Spider-Man, kind of, I think, tells a story that tells us everything we think we've seen so far is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right down to, we do see that in this story, we find out that Boomerang was actually playing Spider-Man all along. Because he used Spider-Man's best pal, Peter Parker, to get close to Spider-Man, to then get Spider-Man to work with him to help him recover the stones. And then, of course, at the end, he betrays Spider-Man, yada, yada, yada. He gives the stones to Fisk. Fisk decides not to bring his wife back because, what's his name? Kindred said, why do you even think she'd want to come back? If she came back, do you really think she'd love you?
Yeah, why do you think she'd want to come back to you?
Exactly, which gets him to bring back the Rose instead. Which really annoys all the other new Avengers. Luke Cage and the gang. But you also have in this the idea that, Spider-Man doesn't respond to emails, which is just weird. Just the idea that Spider-Man is so antisocial. It really almost seems like a thing that he's intentionally doing.
I mean, he was pretty much a loner until, Bendis started putting him in that Avengers book.
Well, but that's the thing. He never really was a loner. Him and the Torch were always close.
Oh yeah, and he worked with Black. Yeah, he worked with people, but he never was really a part of a big organized team for any amount of time.
No, he was never part of a team, and that was always. Although it's interesting because we do get that whole idea in there that if someone paid him to be there, he would probably be Booster Gold.
Mm.
That he is living his life trying to not be Booster Gold. Which does make sense as a character trait for him. But, and this is where we get this teaser at the end of the Chameleon. And that's actually not even a teaser in the book, but it is
it's the cover.
The next issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember his name now, but the guy that I was thinking was Kindred all along. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to reveal something along those lines. Either that the Kindred was the Chameleon, pretending to be Harry, pretending to do these things, but I also think that power that the guy who bought Mysterio's costume had, the idea of infecting people with drugs, serves a purpose. And it's like, because again, like I said, there's nothing about Kindred that can't be explained with either psychotropic drugs or basic robotics in this universe.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, because just look at Kindred. I mean, look at those tentacle things. I mean, look, what's he got? 4 of them. I mean, you could just fancy dress up some Otto Octavius arms and get that effect.
Exactly. There's nothing overwhelming about it, and that's the thing, is that's why I think that character who could teleport drugs into your system is a really great fit for this, because this idea that, I could put so much Xanax in your system that you suddenly feel calm. I could weaponize Xanax and make you not feel guilty about stuff anymore. I could clear that from you. And the idea that the chameleon might have partnered with someone or figured out how to do these things expressly to get this revenge. And of course, for what it's worth, the chameleon is someone who could very easily pretend to be other people.
And again, if he did it, it's kind of brilliant, because it's like he's pretending to be a supernatural being, and instead of like, oh, hey, instead of me coming at you as people let me pretend to be a whole new guy.
Exactly. And it's brilliant. So I do think the idea that the kindred is the man come up from hell is going to be dashed aside as a myth. That's what he wanted everyone to think.
And I mean, Sinister War is coming, so I wonder, it could be Chameleon and a group of guys, and after a couple issues back when we saw Otto get, the thing in his ear, maybe Otto and Mysterio and them are just like, oh no, we're not letting this sit, we're coming for you.
Yeah. And of course, and again, along those same lines, Mephisto has ties to all of these guys now. So you could have this mystical level, but then also this practical level. You could have the practical effect over the mystical thing. So you get that mystical imperator, so that when the mystical guys show up and say, well, there's something magic going on, but you don't see it because the mystical guy is trying to understand what he's looking at, because he's looking at something that's just, oh, hi, I'm Mephisto. I gave this guy a little bit of magic, but not much. And you're going to try to understand why it doesn't look like as much as it's fooling your human brain into thinking it's more than it is, because I'm using Chameleon and Mysterio and drugs to make you think things are different than they are. Because you're still a fragile mortal shell. Unlike these wonderful LMDs we have over in Heroes Reborn.
But I mean, they're hinting around that stuff with One More Day too. I mean, could they go that big, or it's like Chameleon's like, yeah, I know who you are. You thought you sold your everything to Mephisto. Pfft, no. Yeah.
Well, the idea is, I mean, who knows where it goes next? I mean, there's all sorts of things, but I actually get the feeling we might get a tie into Heroes Reborn, and the idea of promising the LMDs they could be real boys. We'll make you a real boy if you sign this contract. You have no souls. At least that's what they've told you. That's the thing. It's like, who says LMDs don't have souls?
Or if it's
who says what a soul is?
Or if it's even Mephisto or somebody can't be like, you know what, I can give you, it doesn't matter if they're from another universe. What, I could give you the souls of the original Squadron Supreme or whatever.
Whatever he needs to do. Whatever he needs to do to make things happen. And so I wonder if there's going to be a reveal in later Spider-Mans that explain Heroes Reborn. But it's great. And I do feel we're going to get an exoneration of my theories in this by the end. If not exactly what I said, but just the idea that Kindred isn't... Because just the way he deals with Norman says it's not some demon climbed up from hell. There's like, I wanted you to be weak to see how weak you were. And then beat you up and then lock you in a cell with... Who? Carly? Some person? Some random dude? Some random lady?
Oh, Carly, yeah. She was kind of, during Brand New Day. That was Peter's girlfriend for a while, yeah.
Yeah, I get the feeling there's a lot more going on here than it seems. And it doesn't seem to be particularly the Lords of Hell Unleashed. That's my theory anyway. But, final book tonight, Champions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like Champions.
I thought it was going to be something else.
Oh, what did you think I would do?
Immortal Hulk, Time of Monsters.
Oh, I did not. Oh, was it? Did you get that book? I did not.
Yeah. Oh,
you know what?
You
want to talk about it? We can talk about it. I heard he does something with Scarecrow. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'll try to add it in. This is the code that wasn't working. I don't know if it's weird. It's like some of the larger issues. Sometimes they don't work right away. Because that was last week. Giant-sized Spider-Man didn't work, and then it worked this week. So,
yeah. So anyway, tell me what happens in this. Because I was like, do I want to get it this week? But I already had a lot of books. I'm like,
yeah.
The last one didn't really.
I mean, it was
the last Immortal Hulk one shot didn't really speak to me. So
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't anything great. I mean, there was two stories. The first one had nothing. I mean, it was like the Green Door and stuff, but it had nothing to do with Banner. It was like prehistoric tribes. I guess this tribe that like their lands are going barren. They don't have food. So like the chief's son is going to run away with this other kid. I don't know if it's romantic or it's just two friends running away together, but the father decides to, sacrifice. He's like, oh, whatever god they worship. Oh, if I sacrifice the boyfriend or whatever to this god, things will turn out for us. But it turns out he sacrifices it to something from the Green Door, so he creates like prehistoric Hulk, who basically just like kills the whole tribe.
Okay.
Again, that's what I'm saying. That first round with this is going to have anything to do with anything, in the irregular series. But it's just like, oh, hey, look, prehistoric Hulk.
Well, that's another callback to the original Lou Ferrigno Hulk series, which for whatever reason he said he'd never watched. Which, gee, you put a lot of references to it for a show you never watched. It's like, that's weird that you would say that because you reference it all the time. Because they did a whole, the prehistoric Hulk. And that one it was like, the meteor falls and that gives the gamma radiation and that causes this person to be a Hulk. But then they reversed the situation as well. And that becomes, that was the one with the lady who played Samantha on Sex and the City. She's in that as a Native American woman, Ms. Dr. Whitecloud, except she goes by Dr. White. So it was weird. It was a weird little tie-in to Kimmy Schmidt years later, but anyway, but
the second story, it's just like, I don't know when it takes place, but Banner goes to this small little movie theater in Kansas, and I guess I don't know what's going on. I didn't think Scarecrow had like powers, but he's basically just like, it almost looks like he's feeding off the fears of all these people in this movie theater. Like he's projecting their fears up onto the movie screen. I'm like, again, no explanation how he's doing this. I didn't think he had these powers, but then he literally basically, I guess he like scares Banner to death. And again, well, it's more Immortal Hulk, so guess what happens?
Yeah.
The Hulk. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, Scarecrow's interesting in what people have done with him over the years.
Yeah.
Because there is actually an entire.
Marvel and DC both have their own Scarecrow. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it was an interesting thing when I think Gwenpool fights Scarecrow. Or maybe Deadpool fights Scarecrow, where you have the little Deadpool trading cards.
Oh, yeah.
As it turns out, this one does have fear manipulation powers now. We don't know why, but he has them. Because that was something that came up in the Falcon and Captain America's. Or no, the Winter Soldier Captain America? I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it Falcon and Captain America, or when Sam Wilson was Captain America, when he first became Captain America, they teamed him up with either Falcon or Winter Soldier, the new Falcon.
Yeah.
And they dealt with the Scarecrow in that one, where suddenly he had fear powers.
Yeah, I think they probably had felt the need to give him powers, because before, wasn't he just like a guy in a costume? He was like, oh, look, I'm scary.
Just a guy in a rubber mask. He was a Scooby-Doo villain.
Exactly.
Which honestly are the best villains, quite frankly.
Yeah, but in a world of superpowers, I mean, you're not getting far with that shtick,
Yeah. Anyway, as it is. But
yeah, once I can get the code in, I'll put the code in. But yeah, if you don't,
he kills that character for reasons, because just to show how bad the Hulk is.
What kills the Scarecrow?
Yeah, doesn't he, like, run him through with a pitchfork or something?
I don't think he
Sets him on
kills
fire.
him, but I don't know if, like, it's so weird. Like I said, they don't explain this, but it's like this movie projectors, like, project everyone's big fears. So, like, yeah, the Hulk puts fear into the Scarecrow, and he sees, like, himself burning on the screen at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, we'll just chalk Scarecrow up to one of those weird characters who will show up occasionally when writers remember that they had them.
I don't know. I'm sorry, people, but I just felt like this was like the weakest of the Hulk, the Immortal Hulk specials. It just seemed more of a money grab than any of them.
Given how weak the first one was, that tells me it's pretty weak.
Yeah, that's what I said. 2 stories. The first one has nothing to do with like Banner or like the Marvel Universe in general, pretty much.
So let's talk Champions, because, hey, now Champions looks good by comparison. There's a great bit in here about, like, because it opens up neatly with them playing a little Fortnite game, you know, where Riri's the only non-flyer in the group, because they're playing this game where they fight Fin Fang Foom, escape from Monster Island, yada, yada, yada. Lots of fun. But then, Snowbird comes in to be all mad at Alexander Nova for being part of a Roxxon intern. Then we get the whole heist storyline here where they worked hard to get Alex and Miles in as Roxxon interns. Basically, it took us 3 issues to get here. We find out that Alex originally got rejected, but he has to sort of work his way back in to be one. They don't really give it to us all here, but it's pretty cool. We get a whole thing about how basically Roxxon is trying to manipulate riots and situations by using agent provocateurs to escalate the violence at peaceful protests. But of course, the Champions use their amazing superpowers to evacuate the areas before the Cradle agents could be seen being attacked by superpowered people, so they naturally all escaped unharmed. It's a lot of fun. It's good as a thing. It's fun here where the agents, and I'm sad we didn't get to talk about this with Lilith, because I would point out that they make a point about how, you know, all the Avengers are millennials, so they can't possibly understand. It's like, we can't even explain to them what a hashtag is, let alone what Roxxon is doing with them. So for that alone is fun. They do make the point that someone says, do you really think Captain America and Thor are millennials? And fair enough, they're not millennials, but they don't. That doesn't really help your argument. So for that alone, it was worth the $3.99. I enjoyed it. It was a fun book to read. That is all my books this week, Phil. I got through all my books. I have no books for next week. I'm sure they'll print more. All right, Philip. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you enjoy talking to me this week?
Of course.
I hope you could hear me well, Philip, because not everyone can hear me very well, because they go down to that 99-cent store. They buy headphones to listen to podcasts on, and those things go out like pretty much out the door when you leave. At least one of those headphones is already gone. Those folks, you know what they should do, Philip? They should go to tweakedaudio.com,
yes,
use the coupon code Southgate, and get high-quality headphones at a fraction of retail prices as they leave the internet. Likewise, they should use that same coupon code Southgate, go to huntakiller.com, be a part of their own personal serial killer podcast, true crime podcast, help Michelle Gray solve a cold case, use that coupon code Southgate upon checkout, get a nice discount on all of that, and move on from there. And if none of that interests them, or if it does interest them, but they still want more, they can always go down to our show notes, click on the Amazon link, go to Amazon.com, buy anything they want, and while they're there, check out Pod Life, the book written by the Southgate podcasting community, which they might enjoy. And if they do enjoy it, I hope you do, they can always reach out and talk to us about all the things they enjoy. And Phil, how can they do that for you?
Well, the easiest way to get a hold of any of us is to email capesandlunatics@gmail.com or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And find links to all of our social media, this YouTube channel, everything at Linktree, linktr.ee/capesandlunatics.
And, of course, you can always write to me that old-fashioned email way the way our Miles and Paz once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitter as I live tweet things like Legends of Tomorrow when they have an interesting story to tell @Charlie Esser. No, we didn't talk about that episode this episode. It was okay. It was okay. Yeah. It was fair to middling. Had some nice stuff. Had a nice punk rock reference. Kind of showed the musical understanding that you can slow punk rock down. You can speed it up. And that's how music gets made. You do something and then you make it fast and then you make it slow.
So I wasn't the only one who was bored. Okay, thank you.
It's pretty cool. But aside from that, yeah, there's a lot of other things that are not as interesting about it. But you can talk to me about those things and follow me at those things @Charlie Esser. That's CHARLI. Yes, S. Yeah. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing!
Thank you, Maz. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have come to another episode of Superconnectivity. I really hope you have enjoyed it and come back next week to Super Connect with me and Phil again. Good night.
Good night. Wow. Okay, around the Marvel Universe, kid.
Yeah, well, I mean... I don't know what else to say about it. It's the Marvel Universe. It's crazy. And, man, I do love it. I do love everything we read in these comics because they're good things to read.